Okay, the journey. Um, I'm gonna mash together genealogy and therapy, and if you'd like to come along, I'd appreciate it. It's kind of interesting, especially for somebody that feels like they don't fit in and don't belong and don't have anybody. Um, to come to where I've gotten with this genealogy search is nothing more than it's fucking amazing, is what it is. Um, and how some coincidences turned out to be not or whatnot. It's amazing. Okay, as I said in my first video, I'll put this all in a playlist. Um, I just saw an orb too, that's crazy. Uh, anyway, I was born. My parents were young. They were raised together like neighbors back in the day in the 70s. Friends of the family, whatnot, they got married. They had me and got divorced at a young age. I get it. I get it. But then my mom, who had custody of me, we all lived in an area where I was close to my biological father and my biological paternal grandparents, as well as, well, I guess I have to rewind that part a little bit because that's a significant part of it as well. I wish I had his picture up here. Maybe I'll pause this and get it. Hold on. Let me do that. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Nelson. He is a pretty amazing man. I'm going to put this down, but please note the feather collection. Okay. Nelson, in my genealogy search, as well as discussing with my mother, because that's my mom's side. My mom had 3 living brothers, and when she was 2, there was one younger than her. When she was 2, her parents, which would be Nelson's daughter, were involved in a car accident, alcohol involved, and they were taken from us. There was, from what I've been told, family squabble, and because back in that day everybody had godparents, and the paternal side of the family wanted to take the kids, there was 4 of them, and send them to their godparents. Nelson and his wife fought and said, no, you're going to keep them together and we're going to take them. They had an old farmhouse along the Cass River, Frankenmuth area, which their family is pretty amazing, and I can't wait to dive into that as well. But he took those 4 kids after raising 3. He raised 3. They were grown, a boy and 2 girls. Grown, moved out. His daughter gets unalived, and he takes in their 4 children. His first wife ends up passing away. He gets remarried. Now his grandkids are growing and they get older and start moving out and whatnot. He does get remarried and he ends up having 2 more daughters. So he raised 3 sets of children. And I believe he was in his 60s when his youngest 2 daughters were born. So, in that middle set, that's where my mother comes from. Okay, so I've only known him as Grandpa, but he was in actuality my great-grandfather. Okay, that's my maternal side. My paternal side, now my mom had custody of me when they divorced, but I was still able to run over and see my paternal grandparents, her, Violet, and her husband. And they were very quiet people, stayed in. I was more of my grandfather's granddaughter, if you will. If I've ever had a connection with anybody, it would be with Grandpa, great Grandpa. Um, he worked third shift at General Motors, and then he ran a full farm too during the day, on top of raising 3 sets of. Okay, um, he was very outdoorsy, in the garden, farm life. Not a real nurturing, hug you. He was present, but silent generation, very different. But he was never horrible to me or anything, just not a huggy kissy, none of that. He was happy to see me when I came over, but that was it. Grandpa on paternal side, I know he was very hands-on. He was very, and I'm a math person, and I blame that all on him. He slept in the living room. They had a single wide trailer. He was already retired at that point from General Motors. I found out years and years down the road, after living up here as an older adult and coming from a family that was so secretive and so quiet and not relatives, nothing. I just happened in one day, we were purchasing a boat from a neighbor on the other side of the lake. And I had mentioned that my grandfather worked at General Motors. Actually, both of them did. And I had heard through the grapevine that my grandfather was the union president. And he was. And this fella that I was getting that boat from knew him. And that about knocked my socks off. I couldn't believe it because nobody knew anybody from my family. We live now in a rural area. My husband calls me a transplant. We don't know anybody up here. We're not related to anybody up here. So that was kind of like, wow. Okay, rewind. So I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, sitting at his coffee table. He would take word searches and have me go through and tell me to circle all the A's. He was a huge cribbage player, and at a very, very young age, he was tough, because if I didn't count my points out right, he would take my points. To the point where I had to sit up on my knees at the kitchen table to see up on the table to count, my cards and everything. In this side of the family, it was also vicious, vicious Yahtzee players. They were. And Grandpa had a tattoo on his arm of a black cat, all stood up like a Halloween, with its hair standing up, and it was standing on a box that had the number 13 in it. And he could rub that 13 and throw a Yahtzee with sixes. Like, I was just amazed. I am still amazed. I'm 50 years old, and I still think back of how many times that man called out a Yahtzee with sixes and he would get it. Just crazy. But Grandma, she more attached on to, she was nice to me, don't get me wrong, but not in a nurturing, huggy, kissy, nobody was. But she attached more to a cousin of mine. It would be her daughter's children. There was a few, I'm still figuring that all out, because they were all adopted out. They were taken out of their home and adopted out. So my grandmother spent more time with my cousin than me, which I'm not hostile at, but that's very odd, in discussing in therapy that, you had this rough and tumble grandfather who I'd love to talk about his pictures and stuff, because I actually think he was bumped up. But whatever, he was very rough, and he took me right under his wing, and he was my bud. He was my best friend. But we never went anywhere. I didn't know any of their family. I didn't know their family existed, extended family, like their siblings or anything. We didn't have that. We didn't have great grandparents or aunts and uncles or anything stop by. So I didn't know anything. Okay, I think I'll end this one.